a warm welcome to all of you that already have come up to this webinar on emotional eating. So a little bit of housekeeping, if you could all also keep your microphones on mute. And if you want to stop me at any point, or you would like to ask any questions, you could use your Q&A button or a chat button and see if you could pop your question over there. And of course, if you want to unmute yourself at any point and ask me a question, you're very welcome to do so as well. So this webinar today is going to last around 40 minutes altogether, and there's going to be maybe 20-25 minutes for questions if there is any. There's going to be a recording available, hopefully, so when we get that sorted, you will be notified. Okay, so what I will do, I will start off with my presentation. I will talk to you a little bit about me as well before we start. So my name is Milena Sobesto. I am a psychotherapist and a psychological therapy lead within ABL Health. And today I came in to speak to you about emotional eating and understanding emotional eating. So just to kind of perhaps, reflect on it, what it means for you to come here. And I would like to obviously know where you're coming from. So if you want to pop it in the chat as well, whereabouts in, Greater Manchester you are from, or wherever you are in the world with us. So just kind of reflecting on emotional eating. If you want to just think about it, sometimes we've got this question, what can I eat? It's a very popular question for all of us. We like to bite into things, we like to chew it, we like to taste it, we like to swallow delicious food as well. And it's an amazing experience. A piece of chocolate can make the feel of anxiousness go away. It makes you feel like you can definitely deal better with sadness. Or anger can either subside from your body and your day can straight away become a little less boring. So does that sound familiar for you? So now I'd like to ask yourself, does that really help if you turn to food when you're feeling uncomfortable or sad? Does that really help? Yeah. And imagine if you could perhaps just eat all the time and be satisfied with your life, yourself, and your body. So when we repress our emotions with food, the questions start. Why did I eat this? I am sure you're familiar with the following statements of, I failed again at being good. I was supposed to watch what I eat. Or I am terrible and I am fat. Why do I want to eat more? Look at myself, I am disgusting, and I will always be like this. Or perhaps you say, I will eat it for the last time, and I will start diet from Monday. Or it tastes so delicious, I should just finish it all. It definitely happened to you. It happens for everyone. It happens for everyone also who struggle with weight or repress feelings with food. It's a vicious cycle of I eat, I feel guilty, I go on a diet, I restrict it all, and then I go back to eating. So why does eating become a problem? Why do we struggle to deal with emotions triggering our eating? Why can't we just eat only what our bodies need? And why do we go to a fridge or a cupboard when we are not hungry? Why, after a difficult conversation with someone, we want to have a piece of cake or a bag of peanuts or crisps? Why do we sometimes have to eat something straight away without being able to wait? So maybe just again, reflect on it. Maybe it's time to deal with your feelings first and start addressing them before you reach for food. You might choose food as opposed to dealing with feelings and emotions because it is easier. And it also can be a habit. Tuning into our emotions means addressing some dark patterns, traumas, feelings of loneliness, upset, sadness, and disappointment that happened to you. And this behavior works because you found it works over the years. And there's some pleasure in eating. And of course, since we are babies, anything that you experienced as a baby didn't result in you being served a breast or a bottle, whether it was an annoying itch or an actual hunger. And we know that research, actually recent research published in 2020 by the Frontiers in Behavioral Science, suggests that when emotional eaters are primed with negative emotions and then eat, they think the food actually tastes better, indicating that their reward system is prone to react positively to food when they are stressed. And food becomes a tool for self-medication that releases dopamine in the brain. So similar to what happens when someone uses a drug. So food is a natural reward because we need it to live. But a lot of people think, researchers think, that there is also more complex behavior serving the reward system in the brain. Food can provide a very personal reward just by its psychological associations. And when this rewarding behavior is reinforced time and time again, it becomes a habit and moves to another part of the brain. Research has shown that basal ganglia, located in the brain cerebrum, is associated with habit formation. When behaviors get repeated enough and become overtrained, they're automated and aren't as connected with the initial reward. So in other words, the behavior becomes more connected to its trigger than the outcome. For example, if every time you're stressed at work and you go grab a burrito, even when you don't really need it, you're still likely to eat it because it's what your brain has been trained to do as a coping mechanism. Emotional eaters may be more prone to train their brains to cope in these unhealthy manners. So basically, we think less about the outcome and more about the stressful circumstance that sets it off. And Freud spoke about it, and other psychologists and neuroscientists. A child is essentially aroused by certain stimuli during each developmental stage. These stimuli are set to satisfy developmental needs. But if a child's needs aren't met during a specific stage, they can develop a fixation related to that. This sometimes is carried on to adulthood. These unresolved needs might be expressed as unhelpful or negative behaviors. For example, if a child has been neglected or underfed, lack of oral stimulation, or overprotected or overfed, excess oral stimulation, as a result, these unmet needs are believed to determine personality traits and behavioral tendencies in adulthood. So eating has its function in emotions. Food makes you happier, gives you energy boost, endorphins distracts you from what's happening. Eating soothes the heightened emotional arousal and fills up the gaps and helps us to deal with the emptiness, maybe loneliness, boredom, sadness, or anger. So just let's look at this beautiful brain on the slide. So when it comes to emotional eating, brain chemicals are highly influential. A major chemical involved with our emotions and mood states is called serotonin. And research shows that as we get more and more stressed out, more stressed out, transmission of serotonin decreases, directly affecting our emotional state, causing us to feel down and absolutely out. And coincidentally, when we eat high sugar, high carbohydrate foods, it leads to an increase in chemicals that help our brain release more serotonin, temporarily elevating our mood and making us feel better emotionally. And unfortunately, this doesn't really last long. and creating, and of course it creates that perpetual cycle that causes us to continually crave unhealthy foods. The great thing is, and as research demonstrates, that of course exercise, movement, as well as other self-care techniques can also raise serotonin. So why are we reaching out for chocolate or crisps when we feel upset? What do the brain chemicals that influence our emotions have to do with whether or not you snack on Cadbury's bar or an apple? To illustrate it, let's use the feel-good chemical serotonin as an example. So probably you'll be questioning why I've got a pinball machine on the slide, but just imagine for a second and picture your brain as a pinball machine. You have millions of transmitters that are sending messages to and from each other. So when your serotonin transmitters fire the signals from, like let's say in the pinball machine, from flippers, it sends the message throughout your brain that you feel good. And that message is the strongest when that feel-good ball is frantically bouncing around in your brain, racking up tons of positive points along the way. When you lose the ball down the chute, that is when the serotonin cell in the brain takes the chemical and breaks it down. That amazing feeling you were just enjoying is lost. So what does your brain want to do? Put another penny in the machine and get another ball. For many of us, that next ball comes in the form of foods that quickly make us feel good, or foods that provide an immediate rush of serotonin. That rush can come with a jolt of sugar. We know sugar stimulates the release of serotonin. Insulin stimulates serotonin uptake into the brain, which in turn boosts our mood, makes us feel better, or masks the stress, pain, boredom, anger, or frustration that we might be feeling. But serotonin is not the only ball in play. You have other chemicals fighting to send your appetite and cravings from bumper to bumper. To see how the whole picture works, think of these chemicals as part of a scale. When the chemicals associated with positive feelings, like serotonin or dopamine, are in the up, you are chemically high. When they're down, you feel anxiety that sends you searching for the foods, especially those simple carbohydrates that get you back to that chemical high. Knowing how your emotions can steer your desire to eat will help you to resist your cravings and ideally avoid them altogether. That's why we need to work on our mental health and emotional stability. So let's just look at the hunger. So when you think about hunger, sometimes we interpret hunger as a difficult sensation that makes us feel anxious or on edge. A fridge full of food can make us feel like we are not a failure anymore, that we are prepared or we're in control. A lot of people would come into our session saying, actually, having a full fridge of food can give me a lot of sense of, I suppose, peace, because I know that there's food in there, and helps them to kind of feel a lot more settled. But really, does it? Some say that, for example, chocolate never asks, it understands. You eat, but you're never really fully fulfilled because you are not hungry for food. And it's quite an interesting concept, that we sometimes eat, but we're not hungry for food. We're experiencing something. You might experience hunger for love, acceptance, fulfillment, or affection. You feed yourself because you want to fulfill these unconscious needs, but it still leaves you with emotions and feelings not being addressed. And this leads to disordered eating, compulsive overeating, binge eating, and other psychological issues that contribute to weight gain. So when you think about meaning of hunger, from that kind of more scientific perspective, understanding hunger in the broader sense helps us to see that it's not only about food and access to it. And to define it, once the person's energy levels fall below a certain threshold, the sensation of hunger is experienced, which is the body's way of motivating the person to eat again. Hunger is telling us that our body is running low on energy. When glucose falls down, we start to experience body cues that indicate hunger. We then eat until we feel full, and our brain releases leptin, appetite hormone, which make us pleasantly satisfied. High levels of leptin tell our brain that there was enough food and a healthy person does not want to eat anymore. Very easy, simple. However, with age, it becomes a little bit more complicated because food starts to fill different functions for us. Going to cinema, we get popcorn. Watching a movie, we associate that with snacking. Eating with age starts to have a social and psychological function. I've mentioned the popcorn in the cinema. We eat automatically, mindlessly, and very fast. We sometimes also go out and feel like we need to eat larger portions because of social pressures, or finishing the meal because we consider it the Last Supper, or we fear the waste. So what Last Supper is an interesting concept where we feel like we've got to clear the plate because we think, oh, well, I will never ever have this again, so I need to have that. So again, it connects to also prohibition. If we tell ourselves we should not have it, we are going to have even bigger appetite for something. Psychological function also, just to go back to the social and psychological function of eating. Psychological function is where we satisfy our emotions and feelings with food. Social, when, for example, we want to make a large dinner for the family because we struggle to show love and feel acceptance in other ways. So we compensate for example, what we want to express. We struggle to express it, so we just throw a big dinner or, make cupcakes for coworkers when we actually want to tell them, I appreciate you. I want you to, I really care about you, and so on. So what also influences our food choices is appetite, which is that motivator to take food in. And interestingly, this is connected with mechanisms of feeling relieved. Experiencing an appetite can be habitual. So the sensation of wanting to eat is a learned reaction to different emotions. Anger, sadness, tiredness, every emotion can trigger you reaching out for food. Understanding your past experience of food and eating can be beneficial for you to recognize how is your eating, emotional eating. As an example, think about when you were small and you were sad and you have been handed some food, whether it was ice cream to compensate for parent not being around, or you experience extreme poverty when young. Feeling of loneliness or restriction can trigger overeating. And of course, remember, famine/restriction equals overeating, binging, or perhaps disordered eating. So anybody who has experienced any restriction, any rule around food would also go into perhaps, overeating or indulging in food a lot more because something was forbidden. So same things go for diets, of course. Studies tell us that experience of any diet heightens the production of cortisol in our body. So cortisol is a stress hormone, and which can lead to general life dissatisfaction or emotional eating. And studies tell us that generally we can last on a diet for 3 months, and then we fall back to what we forbid. So anybody who has experienced any dieting in their life will have some form of disordered eating in there. And it's worth to kind of think about, how do I perceive food? Do I still call it, or do I still label it as good and bad? Okay. So going on to I'm just going to put the whole slide in here. So we've got physiological hunger and emotional hunger. So just to kind of tell you a little bit about physiological hunger. So this is something that builds gradually over time. It produces sensation of emptiness, growling, rumbling, occurs several hours after a meal. A lot of the time, depending on the person, usually should occur around 2 to 3 hours after a meal gradually. It disappears when satisfied or full, leads to eating for physical satisfaction. You're able to eat variety of foods to satisfy it. And usually fullness starts to occur around 20 minutes for starting to eat. Because remember, it takes the brain a little longer to register you had food. And eating is connected with satisfaction and fullness. Emotional eating, on the other hand, it appears suddenly. It whacks you in the face and wants you to go for the cupboard. You usually experience it in your mouth. So think about, is there that sensation I'm experiencing in my mouth? Is there something I'm craving at the moment? It is not connected to any other meals you have in the day. It does not subside after eating something. So you might have a bag of chocolate, then you're going to go for crisps, and then you go for popcorn, and then you're going to have that burrito. So it does not really stop, okay? It is very much difficult to control. It is connected with eating a particular food or group of foods. So some people will go for sweet. Usually when we feel quite sad, quite upset, quite overwhelmed, we go for sugary foods. When we're more anxious, we are turning to foods that have a bit of a crunch, bit of texture in it. So observe that for yourself. If you feel anxious, are you going for crisps? Are you going for peanuts? Think about, what is that texture doing to you? Are you releasing some of that energy that you usually hold in your jaw through eating certain foods? And it's difficult, of course, to control it. A lot of people come in and say that they have lost control, lost their willpower. But that's not all about this, isn't it? It's just where to reflect what else is going on for the person. So eating is connected with feeling guilty. And of course, shame and anger towards the self. So of course, we get really upset with ourselves that we have had quite a large amount of food. But this is kind of very important that we also understand the mechanism of emotional eating. Other things also can trigger emotional eating. So sometimes we eat with our eyes. We see something, I'm sure if you've ever been to, driving somewhere and seen a big billboard of McDonald's, and you perhaps turned, well, why don't I get a McDonald's meal? Because obviously, we are attracted to the colors marketing uses, and of course, if you ever had it, it might be something quite attractive to you. So seeing that, is interesting. Sometimes scrolling to social media, seeing like something being advertised on it also opens up your appetite for that. So it's also interesting to think about what's on our social media that we are kind of almost feeding ourselves. There's been a study showing that some young people have been shown just a photograph of a orange juice on a picture, and then there was kind of they did like a follow-up to ask if that person actually had that orange juice afterwards, and they said yes, because they have seen it, because it was a picture of it that they just randomly scrolled through their social media. So if we could do that with a lot more healthier stuff, that's quite interesting to sort of follow up. So be mindful what you see on your social media as well. And of course, memories trigger eating. So think about the smells of perhaps really favorite meals, or perhaps sometimes you might come up with maybe just sitting around and think about something and actually remember that, I had this wonderful ice cream at that time. So again, be mindful that memories do trigger eating. Of course, climate, access to food or lack of it. That's also we would see people, for example, struggling with buying food or having money towards food poverty affects also emotional eating. Not having food also kind of prompts us to eat a lot a lot more food that actually is very, very much carb heavier, because it kind of gives that person a lot more comfort as well. Okay, so this is just as an example. So how not to overeat. So definitely listen to what your body is telling you. Allow yourself to kind of bring in, okay, how does my body feel? What does my body need in the moment? You know, how can I just satisfy this body and what it needs? And eat mindfully and slowly. So I think a lot of us, you know, I don't know if you've heard, but the way we work in our service, we would encourage people to do a bit of mindful eating. So that's also a wonderful exercise to slow things down. Remember, I've told you earlier that it takes around 20 minutes, 20 to half an hour for the brain to register that we had food. So slowing things down, tasting the food, reflecting on it, thinking about, okay, how does it feel for me? Does that have a specific texture, for example? How do I feel eating that food? Okay, and again, remember our stomachs have 3 settings: hunger, I had food and I'm fulfilled and can't eat anymore, and I overeat. So again, just going back to my hunger scale earlier, think about, you know, what does your body kind of do when you're eating? Do you feel like you want to eat at all? Are you paying attention to your fullness? Is that something you are able to feel? Because some people actually do not feel full and really struggle to get to that point. So it's also interesting what's kind of stopping them. A lot of people who have been on diets in the past really would struggle with that connection, or people who experience a lot of anxiety. Remember, anxiety is an increase of a lot of cortisol, adrenaline, so it's going to be very difficult for us to reach out for that fullness side. So again, this is where we will be doing a lot of work in therapy with some of our clients, some of our patients, to look at that piece where how does your body feel when you're eating? Okay. So what else you could do? And I'm going to give you some questions. So clearly, as you know, emotional eating is not going to solve your problems or emotional issues. It will only add up to overwhelm. So firstly, some practical tips. Try to eat on smaller plates. Again, I've mentioned a visual illusion for the brain to feel satisfied quicker. So if you are having a smaller portion, you can see, actually, you know, this is enough for me. You know, my body needs it. If I need to have a little bit more, I can go and get myself some more. But right now, let's just focus on what I've got in front of me. Perhaps try not to go shopping when hungry, and plan what to get as much as you can. Changing their eating habits or a routine, and making sure people eat regularly. Remember that, you know, if you, let's say, not eat for a whole day, you're more likely to have a very large meal at the end of your day, and you will eat past your fullness. So it's very important that the regular eating is in place while possible, because it's about fueling the body quite regularly. And trying to work on understanding hunger and eating only until we feel full rather than until quite uncomfortable. And I suppose it's interesting to think about that emotions are yours. They're not to fear. You know, it's that internal system that makes you you and helps you to deal with this world that we live in. And it's not easy out there. You need them, and you need to address them more. And definitely you would benefit more to be in touch with how your emotional well-being is. That this system warns you. It tells you about the reality you live in. It connects you to the other humans. It can be interesting to listen to it, you know, to open another bar of chocolate, or perhaps, you know, turn to another kind of, you know, tasty meal. When we react to something we experience in our bodies, it might be located in the stomach. For example, when you experience stressful events. So let's say you have to speak at a conference and your stomach turns into an absolute not, and your emotions tell you to run. So each emotion and experience of it lasts around 1.5 minutes, so 90 seconds. You will not fall apart when you allow yourself to tune into this experience. You can do so much with it. We tend to run away or dismiss our difficult feelings like anxiety, but we need to run toward it and allow ourselves to see our experience as it is. This is where self-care comes in. We need to start reacting compassionately to our internal experiences more and allow ourselves to acknowledge them. So, do you ask for a hug? Reassure yourself. Remind yourself that you're good enough at what you do. Call a friend, write a letter, go to therapy or counseling, enjoy some quiet time, all according to what you experience. So crying as well is a beneficial thing to release the upset. So the next time you feel sad or overwhelmed or even lonely, allow yourself to cry. Sometimes people have been told that crying is a weakness, or boys don't cry, or stop making a scene, you're embarrassing me. If you heard this as a child, I suggest you allow yourself to do more what feels best for you and work on accepting yourself and that feeling. Imagine you miss being on your own because you are very tired and you get chips. Imagine you want to hug someone and you get a piece of chocolate. You need to rest, but you make yourself a cheese sandwich. We serve ourselves substitutes of what we actually need. We bargain with ourselves because sometimes we tell ourselves we are not so important, or we don't deserve to, or I will deal with this by myself. We start to feel selfish for taking ourselves, our bodies, and our minds into consideration. If we do not have in life something we want, we will reward ourselves with food or negative behavior, other negative behavior. So just to answer these questions for yourself, do you feel you've received enough of affection when young? Have you been listened to? Have you felt safe? Do you feel your boundaries were respected? Did you have boundaries at all? Did your parents set healthy boundaries? Have you received a comfort when you needed it? Did you have a level of responsibility that was beyond your age? Were you able to express your emotions fully? Did your parents tell you about the world and life when you were younger and how to deal with challenges? Did your parents have enough patience with you? Did you ever receive food when sad? Have you felt loved and appreciated? So if you answered no to any of the questions, then you now know the reason of your emotional eating. Now it's about giving yourself a right to express your desires, dreams, put yourself on top of the list of priorities. Start telling yourself, I am important. What do I need in the moment? Maybe I need to cry, lie down, maybe let go. Maybe I need to laugh with others. Maybe I need happiness. Maybe warmth of the hug, silence. Maybe I need to appreciate myself. Talk to a friend, go to my GP, take medication. Maybe I need to get a divorce, feel the sense of being proud of myself, dare to be. Maybe I need pleasure. Maybe I need to ask for help. Maybe I need to some understanding or being understood. Maybe I need variety, sleep, creative activities. Maybe I need to express myself, express my sexuality. Maybe go for a walk because I enjoy it, not because I want to shrink my body. Maybe I need a new job. Maybe more people around. Maybe respect towards myself and my body. So to fully nurture ourselves, we need to ask ourselves a few questions. What can I do? What I have? What resources do I have? What I know? Do I know where I'm perhaps, starting to feel quite off, or, when food becomes an issue for me? What do I want? What do I like? What do I dream about? So to summarize, I'm just going to go back to the last slide. So to summarize, emotional eating is still quite largely mysterious. We don't know why some of us eat to cope and others don't. But we are finding that there's way more to it than willpower. It can be about deep-seated emotional coping mechanisms in our brain's unique reward system, or even whether as children we were unknowingly pushed to eat comfort foods when we were sad. So the next time you beat yourself up for over that extra piece of cake or that side of chips, give yourself a break. The reasons behind it may go far deeper than just your ability to say no. So thank you for listening today, and look after yourselves.